Okay, so this is a brake job on a John Deere 6400. I jacked it up you could tell the brakes were dragging when you drove it, because you'd push on the clutch and they would just stop pretty dang quick. And then it wasn't freewheel, you know. You could park, or you could get up on a side hill and push the clutch in, it would just stay parked. It wouldn't move. So, and actually what started this whole job was the hydraulics quit working on it, and we get it pulled in the shop, and the reason they quit working was that pickup screen on the bottom was full of fiber material, which is brake material. So the charge pump couldn't even pick up nothing. I mean, there was nothing. So luckily didn't seem to hurt anything, but we definitely need to get these brakes fixed. And it had been on the radar. It's something that kind of knew needed to be done anyways. So anyways, I had to make that little tool to get that pin out of the bottom of that cylinder, because it is in there really good. There's really no way to tap it out. You got to pull it. So I just welded a couple nuts on the end of that flat, bored a hole in the middle, because that pin has some threads where you can put a bolt in. So did that, and that worked good. So okay, so right here I kind of jumped ahead. I got the bolts loose, and I'm getting ready to pull that axle housing away from the tractor. I'm leaving the wheel tire on and everything. On this side I kind of tried to pry it away. I was kind of learning on this side. I figured out on the other side later on that it worked a lot better to grab on both sides of that tire from the back side and just kind of wiggle back and forth and pull, and it was a lot more effective than trying to pry it out of there. But this worked. I had to there's some bolts clear on that flange, and then there's two big dowel pins that go through the frame, and it's got to slide on them for the first maybe a couple inches. Can't tell what I'm looking at here, sorry. This isn't supposed to be here. Huh. Anyways, okay, now so that obviously I got it separated. That clunk is that brake plate came down, and now it's resting on that shaft. So making progress. So that disc is all messed up, falling apart. I just pulled this out of there, falling apart in chunks. Maybe. Some more, I guess. Turn this back down, see how it works. What do we do here? That's what we do. A little better. Oh, we got pushing on too. Especially if we don't want to drop that plate. Can't figure out why that's all coming. It works. Doesn't seem right to me. I like the shaft coming out with the rest of it here. Oh, that poor little transmission standing like this. Almost best guess. She's getting crooked on me for that reason there. I need a way to lift this up. What do I do? I take the mouse loose. So I've just been easing this out, trying to get that ear that goes over that dowel up there under the cab. If I could have left the shaft in the differential, would have made everything easier, but it wanted to come along, so. Pretty much free. The four-wheel transmission jack, not up the top already. I think about that cut under right here probably. Or the nails. So let's break this shot. It's all metal on the back side. A little bit of fiber left. Not good. So I'm hoping to push that piston out there, hoping it'll be something obvious with the retractor thing. You can see where it's been wearing on that plate on the piston, but that's fairly smooth. I mean, there's not much. Not bad. So right here I had I skipped ahead just a little bit. I ended up using some, what do you call them, ladyfoot pry bars to get that piston pulled out of there, and it was a job. They're really in there good. I don't think there had been any other way to do it. I tried prying with all other kinds of stuff and it just didn't work, but them particular type of pry bars, it works good. So I'll get that on the other side and show it, but yeah, anyways, it was kind of a job, and you can see that brake material was wedged behind there. When I first saw that, I thought, well, golly, that I would have caused lots of problems having that wedge behind that piston where it can't return. But after I took that off of that, where it's on top of that yellow paint right there, there is a hole behind there where that stuff can get pushed back into the transmission. So it wasn't as bad of a deal as I thought. But there you can see them real big O-rings on that piston. So you can see them retractors there too. I wanted to note the difference between the new retractor pins and the old ones. I guess that don't really help much, but these new ones just look way beefier to me. In the spring has a heavier duty spring, and you can see obvious gaps in there. In the old ones, I can't hardly even get my fingernail in there, and I kind of wonder if it didn't get overheated and the spring lost its strength. But I wasn't gonna order new retractor pins, just being a cheap ass, but I'm glad I did, because they're definitely look different. They're the same length though, seems like. So, and what happens with those pistons, they sit inside this roll pin basically, and when the piston pushes out, this roll pin is press fit into that piston, and it pushes against that spring, and then once the hydraulic pressure releases, it'll come back. But what happens if for some reason that piston gets over, and that's how they self-correct, because the hydraulic pressure will push it along this press fit. But if it gets pushed too far for some reason, like if there's a problem with the brake disc, which is what happened here, that brake disc was falling apart. It gets pushed too far and it doesn't have any way to come back. The only way to drive that piston back is to take it apart and actually drive it back with a hammer or whatnot. So that's why the brakes were always hanging up. And I think some guys are having problems with tractors that have had this repair done, and they're locking up right away, and I think that's probably the culprit, is somebody didn't drive that piston all the way back
home. And that piston is hard to get on there. I built this little tool. So here's the piston, but it's got to go on about another inch. And I tried tapping it with a mallet. You can't really tap it with a solid hammer because it's fairly soft material. So I'm gonna try to just kind of press it on with these bolts. There's just a block of wood inside there. There. Might be the same size. Yep. We'll see if this works. Once I get it started, it's just getting those O-rings into their channel, I guess. I'm just having a heck of a time getting it started because I got oil on there to keep it lubricated, and I tap on it and it would just kind of bounce back. And it's a really tight fit anyways. I had to use the lady foot pry bars to get it out, and I was surprised how tight it was. It was kind of a job. Okay, so I just wanted to clear up a little bit of what I was saying there on them retainer springs. That roll pin that's on there and the spring are loose on that assembly. The spring keeps them tight, so it looks like they're solid, but they're separate pieces. And then so that roll pin is a press fit inside the bore on the, there's 3 of them. There's 3 bores on the back side of that piston, and there's 3 more for dowels to fit into to keep it from shearing those retainers off, obviously. But anyway, so those roll pins are press fit into them bores, and so when you push on the brakes, that hydraulic fluid pushes that piston against that spring, and under normal circumstances it won't move on that actual roll pin. But if for some reason there's enough space in there that it can push against the spring, and then it's still got room to move, that hydraulic force has enough to push it along that roll pin, and that's what was causing problems. It overcorrected basically, and it can't go back. It can only go back as far as the spring will take it.